Welcome to the first ever remote networking event. How you doing? I'm gonna need loads of energy. I need loads of energy. I need loads of people nodding. Okay, I need cameras on. I need mics off, and I need energy because there is no physical room. We're all in random rooms dotted around the Kent countryside at this point. But yeah, so the general kind of housekeeping rules for this networking event, which, as I said, is a bit of an experiment. This is the first time that the Chamber have done it. So the rules are keep your cameras on if you can. And again, there is a kind of a caveat there, dress appropriately. Okay, I know that there's a lot of people who are probably dressed well and appropriately up top. So don't stand up as well if you're kind of in your pajamas on the bottom half. That's a kind of one of the things we're seeing a lot with video conferencing at the moment, is everyone looks the part upstairs, but not so much wearing any trousers underneath. So please do not do that, because we will be recording this initial session. We are going to do a bit of a kickoff whilst we wait for more people to join. So we're kind of, I think we're anticipating around 40-ish people. So whilst we wait for those people to join, I'm just going to quickly share my screen with you. A little bit of fun just to kick things off. For those of you that were in the webinar the other day, you will have seen this game, and I'm just going to, sorry, because suddenly when I do that, it disappears behind my camera. Okay, right, so this is called the hand up game, sort of. We normally play this in a real world scenario, but we're going to be playing it today just because I'd like to see if we can get chat working. Okay, I need to get my chat window actually. Is everyone familiar with the chat? Okay, if you've not used Zoom before, you've got the option to write questions in it. You can see Neil's written something there. Good morning, everybody. So again, use that. Someone's having problems with audio. Marilyn, it's all good. I think if we can sort that out by the breakout sessions, for the main part, for when Katie's presenting, we're going to have kind of mics off. And then we're going to be opening up to kind of networking, waving. Thanks, Beth. Like to see that. So right, this game, just to make sure everybody can use chat, is called the hand up game. It's a bit of a virtual icebreaker. We're going to play it for fun. You have to choose either one or two, and you enter that into the chat window. If you get it wrong, you're out, and the winner is the last Zoom standing. So what I'd like you to do now is you'll see two images on the screen. There's toilet roll and hand soap. Toilet roll being number one, hand soap being number two. And around the world, in the last 30 days, what was more searched for? Toilet roll, number one, or hand soap, number two? Thank you, Ellie. That's it, chucking it into the chat. 1, 2, okay. Good. Thank you very much. The correct answer was, in fact, hand soap. For those of you who guessed the first one, it has changed since the last time we did this. So again, we've seen people move. If you did it in the UK, by the way, I did check this morning. So if you checked those two search terms in the UK in the last 30 days, it was still toilet roll. We seem to have an obsession with toilet roll in the UK. Moving on to the next one, lockdown versus isolation. So around the world in the last 30 days, are more people searching for lockdown or isolation? Yes. They're all coming in. Everyone's using chat. Good to see. Nice. Good to see you, Bruce. How you doing? Ellie, how's it going? Okay, and the correct answer was lockdown. Oh, sorry, Beth, you missed it there, but you were wrong anyway, so it's all good. We're moving on to the next one. Next one is Google Hangouts number one or Zoom Communications number two? Off we go. Yes. Oh, Katie's back as well. Katie's back in the room. Good to know. That's good. We won't revert to plan B. We were panicking slightly, but it's all good. Okay, right. It is correct. Number two. Good work, everybody there. I think their share price went up about 30% overnight. Seems to be the video conf of choice. 5G versus 4G, 1 or 2? Lots of controversy around 5G at the moment. Certainly the network itself. Neil, you're living in the past, my friend. It is, of course, 5G. 4G is so 2019. Is that right? Yeah. Moving on to this one. So if we're outside of January now. So vegan versus meat around the world in the last 30 days. What do we think, people? Come on. Still a lot of people going for vegan. We're outside of Veganuary. It's old news, people. It's old news. It's now meat, apparently. just to say, I went vegan 2 years ago. So I'm not saying I've converted back to meat because of the search trends, but I'm just saying that's what the world is searching for at the moment. And Prince Andrew versus Prince Harry. How are we doing room numbers as well? Molly, we're looking good for participants whilst everyone's doing this. Cool. Okay, good. It is, of course, Prince Harry. And I think, hang on, I'm going to skip this one because it will bring us to the last one. Most importantly, around the world in the last 30 days, have more people been searching for Luke or Ant? That was me. One of them's not actually searching for me because I'm definitely not that famous. This is just a joke between myself and my business partner. Thank you, Neil. I appreciate that. Yes, Ellie, good work. Brian, thank you. Yes, you are correct. Of course, people have been searching for Luke. That is, yeah, it's obvious. It's going to be not Ant, clearly not Ant. Right, let me just exit that. Make sure I'm not screen sharing anymore. Can everybody see my face now? Nodding. Good. Everybody is awake. I can see some nodding. Right. Okay. Well, thank you very much for doing that. That's just to really kind of kick things off and hopefully inject a little bit of energy into our first ever virtual networking event. So firstly, thank you very much for coming along. I'm still going to hand over to Michelle from Furley Page to introduce our speaker, Katie. Katie's going to be doing a talk around leadership in the post-COVID-19 world, which is going to be followed by some breakout sessions. So for some networking, the general kind of running order is we're going to have the talk initially. We'll be kicking off with that fairly soon. I think it's about 15 to 20 minutes with Katie. We will then, during that, we're likely to have the 11 o'clock minutes of silence for the key workers, which we will be observing. So there'll be something that's put out on chat. If we could ask you all just to sort of take a moment to reflect on the sacrifices of the key workers during that time period, and then we'll kind of carry on with proceedings after that. I believe the main session is going to be recorded. It is recording, but when we move into the breakout sessions, they will not be recorded. Okay, so there's going to be a room of around 5 people. Each person has around 3 minutes to introduce themselves. So introduce your name, what you do, what your biggest challenges are right now, personal and professional. Be as open as you're willing to be. Then you've got a chance to raise a question either related to Katie's talk, or just discuss your own challenge in more depth. And I think it's, this is hopefully we've got some fantastic business minds in those breakout rooms, and you've got a great opportunity to share those challenges and hopefully get some answers and some ideas to take forward back to your business. And I think, really, really challenging time for all of us, absolutely. But within the challenge, there is opportunity to try to look at how we come out of this quicker and faster and ultimately come out stronger. So that's what the Chamber are focusing their efforts on, trying to make sure that we provide the resources to enable businesses to do exactly that. And today is no different. So a great opportunity to be able to share your challenges and get some insights from other business leaders in the county. There's no pressure as well, guys. It's, this is aimed at trying to be as fun as it possibly can, as helpful as it possibly can. It is the first one, as I said. Try where you can to explore it. If you're new to Zoom, if you're new to Zoom, well, I've been on a billion of them so far in the last 2 weeks. I think everybody's slightly overloaded with video conferencing, but feel free to participate and share. I think that's the kind of the key to today to make it successful. Myself, Molly, Katie will be hopping around the breakout rooms as well, making sure you've got any if you've got any questions, we're around as well. And I think today, just treat it as an opportunity to make some new contacts and hopefully learn, learn from other people and see how we can potentially help other businesses in the room. So without further ado, I shall introduce you to Michelle, who will introduce our speaker of today. And seamlessly me move. There we go.
Can you hear me?
Good.
Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yep.
Good. Hello everyone. Furley Page is delighted to be working with Kent and Victor Chamber to sponsor this first ever virtual networking event. We just felt it was important to try and connect with businesses. Not just personally do we feel isolated, but on a business level you can feel a bit isolated, locked away at home, working from home. Even if those of you that are used to working from home like I am, still a bit of a strain. So I just think it's great that we can just informally get into breakout rooms and get to know each other a bit more and just, compare notes. And now I'll hand over to Katie King from Zoodikers, who will talk to us about leadership.
Thank you very much, Michelle. I'll make my screen full here as well. Can everyone see my slides and hear me okay? Excellent, brilliant. Well, thank you, Luke, for a brilliant quiz. Really enjoyed that. Thought I was going to get all of them right, and then went a bit pear-shaped at the last bit there. So that was a bit of fun. And thank you very much, Michelle, to you and to Neil and Molly and all the team at Kent Invicta for inviting me to speak. The word I keep using at the moment is pivot, and I think we're all having to pivot online and keep evolving and changing the way that we do business. I'm pretty old, I'm 53, and I've spent really the last 15 years trying to do that. So I spent the first 20 or so years of my career feeling, you know, I was in my comfort zone. I'd reached a certain level, and you know, you feel quite senior and you think, oh, you know, this is working quite well. And then when digital technology came along, for me, it was a chance to try to shake off the old way of doing business and be at the forefront of digital technology. But then everyone catches up, and so we're constantly on these waves of new technology, feeling as if we're ahead, people catch up, and so on. And so I think one of my main pieces of advice for any leader, whether you're in your 50s, 60s, whether you're just, you know, you're new to leadership, is just be curious and keep evolving and putting yourself out of your comfort zone. So some of you this morning might be outside of your comfort zone by being on a virtual breakfast networking event like this, but after doing things a few times, you know, you're quite expert. So, you know, that's all I would say initially is keep learning, keep reading, keep trying new things, and that will really help you in your career, however advanced you actually are. So I run an agency in Tunbridge Wells in Kent, a PR and digital marketing agency. But in order to pivot in the way I just described, I wrote a book which was published a year ago about the impact of artificial intelligence on my world of marketing and PR. It's gone down really well, thankfully, and I'll be sharing a couple of little insights from that, because that's about leadership. So I'll come back to that in a few moments. And what it does, it opens doors. So you give away a lot of free time, you share best practice, you do things for free. It leads to paid engagements. One thing is a stepping stone to another. So again, I'll come back to that a little bit, but you know, be prepared to share. It's not always about selling and commercial, it's about empathy and it's about helping others. And I think at the moment, that's particularly important as well. And the final bullet point there is really an all-party parliamentary group, of which I'm a task force member, looking at the adoption of new technologies like AI on business, not just huge enterprises, but small and medium-sized businesses as well. So we will, as Luke said, in about 15 minutes, I'm scheduled to speak for about 20 minutes, so it's probably going to be towards the end of my session. I'm looking at the clock here, so we will have a minute silence at 11 a.m. Really, it's about the fallen key workers, and I think it's really appropriate and for us all to just spare one moment to do that. So I'll probably be leading that. So leadership through a pandemic, and it goes without saying, as Luke just mentioned there, that the world has changed. Everything's been thrown up in the air. We don't yet know where the dust is going to settle, but the world feels as if it's closed on us. We've not experienced anything like this in our lifetime, certainly not since the Spanish flu at the end of World War I. Any crisis plans for any of our businesses that had crisis plans, some of us probably didn't even have them, they may well be outdated now. So I think it's considering what new behaviors do we need to have? What new mindsets do we need to move ourselves forward? I've got my way of doing things, which I'll share with you, but I think it's important maybe to look to some of the top organizations in the world. And we've got our top 4, top 5, and one of them is McKinsey. So I'm referring to them, and then I'll be sharing with you some of my insights over my 30 years of experience, where I've helped some of the world's leaders like Richard Branson, companies like Huawei, Google, and many, many others. So McKinsey talk about 5 behaviors and 5 mindsets, and I'll go through each of these really briefly. The first one is about teamwork. Utilize your team. It's not all about you in your isolation tower as a leader. It's about working together as a wider team, empowering the right people so that they and you as a team lead with confidence. Something I think we've seen, forget your put aside your political beliefs for a moment. I'm not thrusting any political party or dissing and being derogatory to any party, but I think we've seen a reasonably good job in the last 4 weeks of number 3, which is that pause, assess, anticipate and act, and trying wherever possible to demonstrate some empathy. And then number 5, and us, many of us, Luke and myself, running agencies, it's about communications. And for me at the moment, there's a lot of crisis comms. There's a lot of, everyone's online, everyone's basically, gorging on communication, on information and so on. So as leaders, we need to communicate really, really effectively. So let's look at each of those in turn. Number 1, that teamwork. So abandoning that top-down approach, getting lots of teams involved. And you see the McKinsey diagram on the left-hand side there, how they're, grouping these people together, but giving them empowerment and giving them really clear priorities. So organizing those people so that they can rapidly problem solve. And you've seen Boris Johnson do that with, all of the different members of his cabinet. Empowering and leading with confidence. It's giving people that authority, making them accountable, making your teams, however big you are, however small you are, making sure that you've got the right kind of people and getting that detachment so that people can stand back from a problem, and that kind of calmness that you get, from that sort of approach. So what we're really thinking of here is that bounded optimism, where you've got a mix of both confidence, but not overconfidence, mixed in with a dose of realism as well. Number 3 is, like I say, pause, step back from it for a moment, assess the situation. One of the biggest things for me with artificial intelligence is big data. It's information, it's insights, and we need, and you're hearing constantly each week, we're learning from the science, we're hearing, we need to get those data points in. So assessing the situation from multiple vantage points, from multiple experts, excuse me, anticipating what might happen next is really important as well, but then not delaying too much. And some would argue that the current administration has delayed too much, but we need to act swiftly on the back of that evidence. Number 4 is important all the way around, whether you're in a pandemic, in good times, in bad times. It's about empathy. And so we're thinking here, what difference can we make on the lives of all of our different stakeholders, our staff, our clients, our supply chain, the people in the community where we operate. And it's acknowledging their personal and professional challenges and paying attention to people and how they might be struggling and ways in which we can absolutely support them. And again, not being political here and looking to quality sources, it's perception and reality. Some would argue Trump's doing an incredible job. Others here perceiving that he is draining people's energy, and it's one of the draining those last reserves of decency. Empathy is really important, and I think every leader worldwide in every business, whether it's a politician, whether it's in a business, whether it's in a charitable sector, we need to be seen and we need to live and breathe that empathy for it to be, ring true. The final one, communicate really effectively. So transparency, frequency. Again, I think the current government in the UK are doing a pretty good job at the frequency. Not everything's always transparent, but trying to address people's concerns, giving them their voice, and allowing the leadership across the board to speak really effectively. Next point I would raise is really close to my heart, and it's about purpose. And I think the current pandemic is shining a light for the future on what kind of business we are. So what's our role? What's our raison d'etre? What responsibility do we have to society? Do we practice what we preach? And what I would encourage you all here, if you haven't read it and listened to it, is a 15-minute long TEDx talk from Simon Sinek, the author of, Why. So everyone knows what their organization does, the products they have, what they sell. Some will know how they do it. Yeah, what makes it special. But the really special and successful companies and successful leaders are those which know why they are in business. It's not about making money. That's a result of what you do. So what's your purpose? What's your belief system? What's the very reason for your existence? And I think the current pandemic is shining a light on many companies who perhaps are not doing that, not sharing that, not showing what they're in business for. And we're seeing a backlash for those doing it badly and those that are doing it well being held up in esteem. So here we've got Wetherspoons not giving any kind of payout, and we've got lots of engagement and critique on channels like Facebook and Twitter saying, never use a Wetherspoons pub again. #Wetherspoons. Scumbags, who would ever want to work for them again? And we see this from some of the other retailers and hospitality organizations as well. Similarly with Waitrose, people are saying you should be ashamed. This is another company and we need to remember how poorly their staff have been treated. Again, perception and reality, but that's a perception that some people have. Morrison staff here again, getting a bonus for coming into work. Very, very different. So again, you make up your own minds. I'm not thrusting my opinion on anybody, but there is a perception out there of the way in which people are treating their staff during crises. And then when we're outside of the crisis, what's life going to be like? The truth is nobody really knows. The Telegraph, the FT, the Times, Kent and Sussex Courier, we've all got our opinions. But I think what we do know for certain is that the world as we know it may well have changed forever. Or you could argue people will forget really, really quickly. So leaders certainly need to recognize that their approach, for example, to these kinds of ways of doing business, working remotely, going on to platforms like this, I think that will continue for a long, long time. It's very green, it's very time effective. Once people get over the first month of getting their IT sorted, I think they'll quite enjoy it. So do we have a clear strategy for life after lockdown? How are we going to support our staff over the coming 4 to 6 weeks as we transition out of it? And this is interesting. This was published a week or so ago where, major philanthropists like Bill Gates back 4 or 5 years ago actually warned that there would be pandemics like this every couple of decades. So we'll get out of this one, and what we've got to be thinking is preparing for the next potential crisis. I've lived through and helped major clients over the years with horse meat scandals and SARS and now this and others in the past, but this is huge. And there may well be more, hopefully not, but there may well be more like it. But what is certain is that we need to be really agile as leaders in the face of other really important changes. And the kind of changes I'm referring to now are not pandemics, but technological change. And this is what I live and breathe. Most of my days are spent traveling around the world, consulting, giving keynote speeches, talking to people about how you harness artificial intelligence and other technologies for competitive advantage. And so what I'm sharing with you here is the Gartner hype cycle. And what becomes clear in that first section is that when AI dies down over the coming years, there are all these other incredible technologies on the runway that are going to dominate the headlines. And so you have an innovation trigger. Something becomes technically, scientifically feasible, and everyone's interested in it. We have a peak of paranoia and hype, and the press write about it, but they refer back to Hollywood, robot warfare. They don't have facts and figures and return on investment case studies at their fingertips. And what we then have as the consumers of that is a peak of inflated expectation, of worry, of paranoia. Where we are currently with technologies like AI and machine learning is the third one along, that trough of disillusionment, where people have started to deploy it and they're a bit cynical. They've engaged with a chatbot or actually gone into somebody's offices like a bank that I worked with, and it's quite limited, it's quite gimmicky. And we're 2 to 5 years away from being at that real period of plateau of productivity, where it's not just in one area in our marketing, but it's at scale across the organization. And bear in mind, This is going to happen with all these different technologies. We are on a constant cycle of getting to grips with new technologies. And just as we get comfortable, something else is along there in the wings. Just like the current pandemic, we'll get out of it in a few months, and then there'll be something else to challenge what we're doing. So my point at the very beginning, be curious, keep being agile, and put things in place. I think I've got time for one more slide. We're getting close to 11 a.m. So my scorecard for success, I'm actually going to pause there because it's quite a detailed one. I'm going to let you look at it while we pause within the next few seconds for the minute silence. So I'll leave you to read this, and we will pause for 1 minute.
Casey, I think
Okay,
we're good to go.
I think we're good to go now. Okay, so thank you for that. I just have a few more minutes left, and I spent a year researching technology like AI, going to major brands, to lots of technology disruptors, to academics, to policymakers, politicians, and so on. That's all in my book, and it's a collection of case studies. But what you have here is really an approach to not just business with relation to AI, but business per se. So I'll take you through this really, really quickly. Do you have the right mindset for change, the kind of change that's coming in the future with technology, future change around pandemics, for example, that vision, that openness, that flexibility? You can score yourself 0 out of 5 for each of these. And then if you get a score of 0 to 20, you're traditional. In the middle there, you're transitional, and 35 plus, you're transformational. Do you have the buy-in of the board? Do you have all these young up-and-coming people rushing around really excited about a project, but the board are closing in on it? So you need that support from the top. Don't just jump in on it tactically. Do you actually have a business case? Do you have a problem to solve with some of the new technologies? Don't just jump on the bandwagon, but think about a problem it can solve in your organization. And then do number 4, do an experimentation, do some kind of proof of concept. To do this, you need to collaborate. You need that interdepartmental collaboration, whether that's your sales and marketing team with customer experience or your finance team. To do that, you need the right talent. So in relation to AI, you might need to reskill, rehire. You might need to bring in the right talent on a project basis. Above all, for change as a leader, you need the right kind of culture, outward looking, one that has the long-term approach. You need to innovate and be agile. Number 8, like I mentioned. 9 is really, really crucial. A bit like my points about empathy. What's the wider impact of the work you do? The ethics, the transparency, the regulation. So with regard to technologies like artificial intelligence, we need to balance the innovation with regulation so that it's fair and, you know, we don't, you know, make problems for other people. There's an opportunity to democratize the power that it can give you around the world. Now, of course, if we do that too slowly, the US, China, and other countries may speed on ahead, but it's that balance of regulation and innovation. And then the final one, which again is really, really important, pull all of this together into some kind of plan, some kind of roadmap so that you are ready to execute. And with that in mind, my last couple of slides, it's having a plan. This could be 6 months, it could be a 3-year plan, but such a lot can change in a year, in 2 years, in 3 years. And your plan might look like this, where a section of it is about new behaviors you need to demonstrate, new processes you need to bring into the organization, having a watching brief on your competition, on new technologies, on your industry and the new jargon and the new research, going and looking at tools that you might deploy. So when I run seminars on AI, you know, I show people all kinds of tools and then they need to go away and trial those and do some kind of proof of concept. How are we going to collaborate with our supply chain, with our customers, you know, with potentially even our competition, and doing those proofs of concept? So that is the potential for any kind of leader to use a plan like that. But above all, for me, it's about vision, it's about purpose, it's about excellent communication. And that's me in a tiny little company, and that's as relevant for a major organization like Microsoft or a major bank, whatever it might be. So with that in mind, I'm going to hand back to Luke. I think we're going to open up the chat rooms. But I think my final point really is not to be fearful of change. It's easy to be in your comfort zone. Give you a simple example. I've used the lockdown period to be comfortable going into the woods with my dog round the corner from me here, instead of jumping in my car and driving to the common, because I was always frightened I would get lost and the dog would get lost. And it only took about 4 times going with my husband and following the route to actually say, actually now I can walk out of my house, walk that Cocker Spaniel who's absolutely crazy. So I know what it feels like to be in your comfort zone and do things in a habit, in the way you've always done them, but stretch yourself. And by learning and continually pivoting and reading, you know, you really can change. And I think that's going to be absolutely fundamental for all of us going forward. So thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to hearing some of the dialogue in some of the meeting rooms in a moment.
Fantastic. Thanks very much for that, Katie. That was amazing. Guys, put some comments in the chat. Some thanks for Katie. That was awesome. Some really interesting ideas that Katie's going to be talking through there. And obviously now it's an opportunity for us to jump into some breakout sessions. So we're going to be jumping into separate rooms where we'll be able to kind of discuss some of those points. So I think in any of those key points around behavior changes, certainly something that we're talking a lot about, and what the impacts are. So getting some ideas around that, maybe discuss that with some of your groups. I think Katie, you mentioned goal setting there about walking a dog. I think that's a great one. Mine is to develop some calf muscles, because I don't have any. Unfortunately, I was never born with calf muscles. I'm now trying to develop those. There's progress being made. I will, if anyone's in, no, I won't share photos. It's not pleasant. But the point is that I think having goals and keeping focused during this time period is really important. So all those sorts of things are great topics of conversation for the breakout. One thing just to note, I'm just going to quickly bring this up. I don't know if anyone can, how big you can see that on my screen, but there are some other dates for your diaries before we jump into the breakout rooms. And the next networking event will be on the 12th of May. More information is available on the KICC website about that. This Thursday, we've got at 1:30, we've got a webinar on cybersecurity as well, with Neil Miller from Teleintelligence and Antonio Fletcher from Bracious. So there's a couple of dates there for your diaries before we jump into those breakout rooms. So I think I'll hand over to Molly, who's going to press the magic breakout room button. Welcome back to the main room. Hope everybody had enjoyable breakout sessions and got to meet some new people, but also got hopefully some ideas to take forward, one action that you're going to do, and one thing that you're doing currently that you want to do in the new world. I think the last group, someone mentioned about doing more on LinkedIn. It's been quite an interesting platform recently, lots of kind of content going on there, which has allowed us all to kind of to meet and network remotely during these times, but actually something that, you know, can absolutely happen and continue into the new world as well. So what we're going to do now is just open up this session to questions. So if you've got any questions for Katie or for anybody else, if you were having a conversation with somebody in your breakout room but you didn't manage to kind of finish it, feel free to pose them a question. We could certainly try to do this as an open chat, so feel free to unmic and pose the question. We'll see how we get on. If it gets mad, then we'll go back to chat. But has anyone got any questions initially for Katie?
I've got a question for Katie, if I might ask. Your scorecard, I mean, it was quite small on the screen, but it looked particularly comprehensive and had some really interesting points in there. And that's certainly for my business going forward. It is about seeing, you know, what needs to be changing. What advice would you give for kind of a small company that has, Oscar, please, darling, can you just stop snoring for 2 moments, please?
Yes, this is what we're talking about, people. This is the world that we're living in. Can
you give any advice for those sort of smaller companies? I mean, I'm looking to try to work in a sort of a mastermind group of other business owners, but I just wondered on your feedback for those smaller companies who perhaps don't have the number of people to help with those.
Yeah, definitely, Emma. So Molly will make available to everybody a PDF of the slides, so you'll be able to see that again, bigger, and on my website you can see it in full as well. I'm a small business too, and I work with lots of small businesses as well as bigger organizations. And I think one of the sections in it is business case. So it's thinking about your goals, whether it's you or in the collective that you just described. So are you thinking about deploying new technologies, for example, in the way you attract staff, so in your HR, or in the way you do your marketing and your sales? And in my normal slide deck, and again, I'm happy to make some of that available, I look at the impact of new technology on that. And some of it is very affordable. Some of this is a bit like if any of you do digital marketing and you use Hootsuite, or you do your accounting in the cloud. So we're talking sometimes of an investment of £30 to £80 per month, and that could help you do some really quality digital marketing, or it could help you with your HR. So it's having a business case and it's understanding what is it I'm trying to achieve, rather than maybe a bigger organization might spend £15,000 to £25,000 on, you know, a chatbot or some kind of more robust humanoid style robot kind of interface. So again, you can see there the scale, but I'm not suggesting everyone goes away instantly and deploys these kind of technologies. Look at the scorecard, think about what is it you're trying to achieve, and maybe do a small proof of concept by a free account like Concurred or Phrasee or Conversica, which are tools you can use for your marketing using AI. So that's just an example.
Great stuff.
Thanks very much, Katie.
Yeah,
thank you, Emma.
Thanks for that. Any other questions, guys? And Emma, I'm loving the sort of the real live sort of kids, dogs, whatever. Was it Oscar? Was it Oscar? Sorry.
Oscar not only has been getting out the hand saw, he also got out an electric saw earlier. So yeah, it's been fun, and my daughter's in that room.
Okay, is a child. I was just trying to work out if that was a dog or a child. But thank you for clarifying. Yeah, I've had my daughter emerging during the conversation and on a live show, so that's fantastic. Does anyone remember the BBC? Remember the guy that had the BBC kind of? That just happens on a daily basis now. That's not even news anymore. That's just what it is. Is there any other questions, guys? Michelle, do you want to unmute? Go for it. This question, I think.
Can I talk?
Well, I was just going to say, I really like the idea that Emma had about linking with like-minded businesses. They're all going through the same thing. I just wondered, is the Chamber going to do anything to help businesses get together in small groups, other than just, I mean, I think the Chamber's got construction groups, but there may be other things that the Chamber could do, perhaps for smaller businesses. I don't know. I mean, Neil, that's just really a question for Neil, I suppose.
Yeah, well, just to jump in on that. So when we, as a chamber, there in the sort of the normal world, there were networking events organised for kind of different sectors and different interests as well. So the board members would often have monthly gatherings with people. So it's kind of, I think it's just a case of transitioning that format to a degree, moving that into different sectors. And I think, you know, if there's interest and if it's something that that, you know, people like the idea of, I think the chamber is particularly well placed to do that. And I'm sure Molly has got nothing else to do today. So she's definitely, look at, is that right, Molly? Nodding? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, she's not nodding at all, but I'm going to say that she's nodding. But I think it's a great idea. I think the chamber's really well placed to do that. I'd like this Zoom event or 1 or 2 days a week if possible. Wow, Ellie, that is yeah, you're loving Zoom.
I think Beth had a
yeah, Beth
had a question as well.
I don't want to dominate it because I recognise I work for a really massive organisation, but I was just curious about where, Katie, when you put up the McKinsey leadership slide, and it was leadership in a crisis. Do you think that's different to the leadership skills generally that businesses need going forward anyway?
No, not too dissimilar, to be honest with you, Beth. I think, as I mentioned, the theme of this was in a post-COVID-19 world, and I wanted to make it very relevant to today and show where we are today. But actually, I think the empathy, the clear communications, the involvement of teams and so on is as relevant in a normal, in a non-crisis environment. I think sometimes it just brings to the fore in a crisis that need for transparency and empathy and so on. But I think they're, for me, they're really skills, going forward. What I do have in another slide, I won't show it now, but I'll just briefly summarize it. If you think of all these incredible technologies that are out there, the World Economic Forum suggested 10 major skills that many of us are going to need over the coming decade. And it was really reassuring. What it wasn't about was you've all got to go away and learn to code. And what it was about was complex problem solving, empathy, emotional intelligence, and things like that. So check those out when you get a moment. World Economic Forum, 10 key skills all of us are going to need for the coming decade. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised that they're actually the same things that good leaders have been doing for the past 30 years, because actually that empathy, that creativity and so on are what the machines can't do. A machine can break down things into processes and learn in a creative way what's won awards for the last 10 years for a luxury car, and a machine can work with a creative agency using AI and come up with an award-winning ad, but the machine itself isn't creative. So it's breaking things down into manageable chunks, and but that empathy, creativity and those softer human skills are really, really important.
Right, thank you.
Great, thanks very much. I think there is a couple of questions in chat as well, guys. Remember to feel free to use chat as well if you don't fancy having your kids shouting in the background like mine. So if you wanted to just ask your questions in there. Emma, running a service accommodation business and work together with some competitors as well. So that's fantastic to see. I think this is a great kind of opportunity for collaboration, working together with different businesses there. So well done for that, Emma. There's a legal question from Colin. With lockdown and clients not paying their invoices, excuses really, do we charge late payment fees, and what is the legal position? I mean, if anybody, I mean, I could give a view on it if that's of interest. I don't know, Katie, have you got any views on that one?
Yeah, I've said email me if I put my email in the chat box, and then I'll ask a colleague to get in touch with Colin. Yeah,
great. Okay, good stuff. And I think, again, remember, guys, I think actually tapping into Katie's response around the skill sets that we need around empathy. There is also a point here of knowing when to start charging those. We're all desperate for cash, absolutely, because cash is king, and in these situations, but there's also a balancing act to be had of how are you going to come out of this, and what relationships you need to maintain in the long term. So I think there's an actual legal answer to that question, and there's also a human answer to that question as well.
I agree with that, Luke. I really do. It's it's looking at it from the medium to the long term.
Yeah. I think we're finding the same as well. We've got some people who are refusing that. Interestingly, they're the same people that were refusing to pay prior to this as well. Surprising, that, isn't it? So I think there's a stress testing and sense of actually asking some questions to find out where they are. We're having calls with those people, finding out their actual situation and try to understand it before we make a judgment of what we do next. I think it's that kind of empathy.
Do you mind me adding to that question?
Yeah, go for it, Colin. Yeah.
We work in the civil engineering world, so we supply to sites. So, and most of these this is a concrete product for retaining walls. So we've gone through the manufacturing process, which has to be held in our manufacturing for 28 days. It's then delivered. So we've got all these costs associated. Then by the time then it's delivered to site, we then start to invoice them 30 days. My frustration from this is certain clients went on to furlough, made no contact with anybody. Didn't even say, oh, sorry guys, we're not going to pay our invoices. We had others that turned around and said, we're going to be delayed on our invoicing because of the furlough position, being able to get in touch with stuff. But those that have turned around and gone, no contact at all, they still have to have more product on site. Yeah. And you're talking about, £100,000 worth of product that goes to them. It is a legal question at the end of that. There's a moral part, which I think is on their side.
Yeah, I'm not saying ignore the fact that you have to do it. I'm just saying that there's it's not a black and white, should we say?
No, there are two sides. But there's a moral side and there's a legal side. And if they've got more product to be delivered to site, I like to take the higher ground and say, well, yeah, you'll still get the product. But unfortunately, in future terms with those type of clients, you turn around and go, okay, well, we have to have 50% upfront, that kind of thing. So I'm saying it from not just our perspective. I think we have to change our mentality in how we approach our clients.
Absolutely, yeah. And cash is very much king, everybody, as well. So it is very, very important to have the cash in to protect the cash flow and what's coming up next. I'm going to jump to Graham. Did you want to unmute and ask your question, please?
Yeah, thank you. Well, could I just, on the back of what Colin's just said, could I just say probably one of the most important things is to keep record of, keep maintaining the attempts to contact your debtors and keep a record of what you're doing, especially if you've got any form of credit insurance, because otherwise you'll invalidate the credit insurance and the opportunity to claim. The question is very much a straw poll question, and it's picking up on one of the comments that were made earlier about the Chamber facilitating contact. I'm very much, as some of you who've spoken directly with me this morning will know, I'm very much involved in international trading situations, and I do field a lot of inquiries via the Chamber in international trade questions and answers. My question is, would there be some benefit, mileage, whatever word you want to use, just straw poll amongst the attendees today, if there were a group chat every now and again via Zoom with international trade as the kind of the general theme, if you like?
Yeah, I mean, we can. Anybody if you want to put in chat, maybe just like put yes in chat just to give us a kind of a test there. I think Graham, it's a really interesting one. I think we've got to. I think the Chamber's probably got to do something on a broader level as well, because I think obviously there's lots of different sectors as well, in the sense of obviously there's the international aspect to it, but making sure that that we as a Chamber can facilitate content for that. But yes, absolutely. So there's a couple in the chat saying yes around that, and I think maybe Molly, Neil, we can talk around how we can potentially facilitate that, ask some more questions on a broader scale
Okay, well, I'm making a note of those who are saying yes, just in my basic way here, so we can perhaps start something.
Yeah.
Hi, Graham. We can take this offline as well, so we can have a chat.
Okay, Neil.
Brilliant. Any other questions, guys? Can I throw it out there to one thing that you want to? Oh, hang on. Oh, no worries, Beth. Child issues, all good. Thank you for joining. I think that is an experience that we are all having as well. It's the balancing act of the work-life balance has become slightly different recently, hasn't it? So not to worry, and if anyone does need to dash off or anything like that, that's absolutely fine. Guys, maybe to anyone want to share the one thing that or some things that they want to do in the new world, so like something they're doing now that they want to kind of take forward, so those behavior changes that Katie was talking about, what sort of stuff could we take forward into the new world? Has anyone got anything that they wanted to share?
Hi, I can give feedback what our group did. I
think we might be struggling with internet connection.
Do you want me to start?
Yeah, well, just
any better?
Give it another try and see what happens. Nope.
Oh, no.
Is that any better without my video?
Oh, that sounds better. Yes, go for it. What are you going to take forward into the new world? What are you doing now that you want to carry on doing?
So I had feedback from all of ours. So Kim Coppins was going to carry on doing Zoom and Skype. Lawrence Ainsworth was look further forward to see how our new sort of environment will impact business going forward. Graham Card was looking at communication revolution. John Whale was looking at leadership and different perspectives with relationships with their staff. And I was looking at, looking forward with Katie's scorecard and doing those kind of things. Thank you.
It's fantastic. Very organised there, Emma. Good work. Glad to see somebody's organised. Is that right? Was there any other bits you wanted to cover off, Katie? Any kind of questions that you wanted to throw out there to the group?
So no, I mean, Emma summarised there. Each of the groups I went in, I was sort of saying to them, could one of you volunteer to come back and share some of those? Thinking of the earlier breakout as well, people talked about seeing this as an opportunity, as well as some of the challenges, whether that's for one of the members learning some new Latin languages and having the time to actually tidy an office, through to some of the ones that we've just heard there of continuing to use these kinds of technologies, like me schlepping around the country and worldwide, actually now pivoting and using virtual classrooms and things like this, even when lockdown ends. They were some of them. One of them, I think it was Margaret, actually has a real opportunity with her holistic hand sanitizer. So actually using this period to see the opportunity of how her product could be used by the NHS. I know Don was talking about, again, adapting to working remotely and looking professional. One person sort of mentioned that need to, is it a problem that you can see my bed in the background? Actually, empathy. Quite a few people mentioned the reality of the barriers are down and we've got empathy with one another now, and actually we're all in the same boat and quite human. So, more accepting of kind of this relaxed way of working, which maybe brings out authenticity a bit more. So they were some of the points that came across in the groups I dipped in and out of.
Great. Yeah, really good points there. I think planning for that new world authenticity, a video setup as well. I think that's a big thing. I would just say try to have the light source in front of you. That's my top tip. Try to make sure that you've got that you're not the Bond villain. I see a lot of Bond villains in video conferencing that I do with light sources behind them, and they're just kind of silhouetted out. So yeah, there's some new challenges that we're all likely to face as well. So just a few mentions as well. Firstly, so someone mentioned that they can't message privately. Emma, I'm not sure what's happened there. If you're okay to put it in the main chat, go for it. I don't know, it should be able to message privately, but if not, you could drop whoever it is an email. Molly is going to launch a poll that essentially that will cover that. Sorry, that will go. That relates to what we were talking about earlier. I think Graham, you mentioned about the topics that people might want to cover. So some smaller networking breakout groups that the chamber can facilitate. So feel free to kind of participate in that. We'd love to find out more from you guys about what topics and what kind of smaller groups that the chamber can facilitate in some form of networking event.
I think could I just make a brief comment?
You go for it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the reason I asked the question is because a few years ago we used to try once a quarter, something like that, to get international traders together in one room and call it networking. The challenge tended to be that the member from the international trader would perhaps be either in a clerk or junior management type role, sometimes senior management, but quite often wasn't able to, whether it be a Friday lunchtime or when it may have been, wasn't able to make a meeting. So it was a very difficult thing to put together. It occurs to me that what we've got now is a situation where actually it's a lot easier to get all of those people together who might have found it difficult to travel to Ashford or to Rochester. Very much so, yeah. And I think that kind of plays into the comment Katie made about the breakout session around opportunities. I think it's it's not always easy to talk about opportunity with so much negativity going around, but I also think that the best way that we all come out of this quicker and hopefully stronger is to try to find some opportunities in the adversity around, not in an exploitative way, but in a way that actually can help people and you can add value, or you can connect with people in different ways that you weren't before. So Graham, I think that's a great idea. And I think you were going to see more of this as well. I think actually travel times, Katie's mentioned obviously a lot of talks that she does around the country, around the world, takes you out of the office for a long time. It's like, part of me loves doing it, part of me hates doing it because I miss the family. But actually I did 6 presentations last week in 5 days and 2 live shows, and I still had dinner every night with my family. So I think there's some opportunities in there that we can all kind of embrace. So I think positive thinking and share some of those ideas has been really, really good. Is there any additional questions before we call it a day and everyone can head off to lunch?
One final point that Bryn mentioned was we mustn't forget that we need to win the war first and worry a bit less about individual battles. That's a very salient point too, I think.
Very much so. Very much so. Yeah, great note to end on there. So guys, just to kind of quickly remind you, we have got another networking event on the 12th of May, which is some more information on the website. Molly's going to follow up with some details around that. We've also got this Thursday at 1:30 a webinar on cybersecurity with Neil Miller from 10 Intelligence and Antonia Fletcher from Gracious. So again, some different dates for your diary there. Thank you very much for all being a part of today, the first ever event that we have run. There's a poll that has just appeared on the screen. Thank you very much for that, Molly. But yeah, generally best of luck to everybody with each of your individual challenges that you're facing. And hopefully, stay in contact with the chamber, and we can kind of work on getting out of this all together. That is it from us. I think I will just leave the chat open so that we can kind of collect that poll. And I think Molly will close that off. I'm going to have to dash, but if anyone's, if you want to carry on chatting, I think Molly will keep the room open for a little bit longer as well. So thanks very much for getting involved, guys. Appreciate it.
Well done, Luke. Great sharing.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much.